Welcome back to Aether. So today we have a special event here. We once again are honored to welcome back Anna Orlinska, who is a healer as well. She's a medium, counselor, holistic life coach, sports nutritionist, personal trainer, and Reiki Master. And you can find her at AwakenedYou.ca. And you'll also notice that Satomi isn't here. She's at a different event today. So it'll be Anna and I to carry the day. And so I'm especially grateful to Anna for being here as a co-host. So we're gonna have some fun. We're gonna continue with where we left off last week, and our focus is on how impossible becomes inevitable. So this is part 2. I feel like we had a great conversation last week about how that happens. Anna had some beautiful thoughts that she shared with us, and she's anxious to dive in further here, and we'll see where this conversation goes. It's a beautiful subject matter. So as always, questions and comments are welcome. Please join in here to the conversation. It always enhances the show when you send us your comments, and we appreciate that. And subscribe to our channel and like and share this episode if you like it. And so with all that, let's dive into our subject matter here, how impossible becomes inevitable. And we left last week, we talked about parts of it where you were saying that, when you had enough of the way you are, you're living your life, whether that be what you do for a living, your health, relationships, addictions, coping mechanisms, everything like that. And you've been doing some healing or steps to change it. Maybe you've made some strides, but suddenly something clicks. So this is a really important point. So something clicks very strongly in you, and you need to change now, and the way things are just no longer acceptable. And I know Anna, you suggested this subject matter to us, and we just loved it. We got a viewer on the show here, Satomi Knudsen, sending a shout out saying hi. Hello, Satomi.
Satomi.
Because you're going through a lot of changes in your own life,
Yeah.
and things built up to a certain point, and it needed to change. And I know you had a relationship change. You were talking about that a little bit. Your partner isn't with you now, and that's created a huge amount of change and disruption in your life. So where would you like to take this conversation this week and start it off? And we'll go from there.
Well, the big question actually I had from last week when my biggest takeaway is I started to ask, yes, this click happens, but why and where does it come from? And I've had many, many times in my life, not just this one, where and I used to describe it as, something clicked, and now I'm taking this path I'd never thought, I wanted to, but I never thought I would actually be able to do. And I just always went with it. It was always just oh, I know the click will happen. And it always has. But I asked, I'm where does this click come from? Why does this happen? And more importantly, yes, I want to better my life, but I'm also doing all of this to help others as well. And so it was, how can I coach others or, help others to reach this click that, suddenly makes this path that we want to go on inevitable. And we're taking the steps, even though we're terrified. So I did what I always do when I have a question, is I asked my spirit guides and my team, and I tuned into them, and I said, what happens when we reach this point? And they gave me a beautiful answer in that all these little, I mean, what we think are little steps that we're taking to heal. So when we feel like we're doing something and it's not working, it's just our ego perceiving it's not working. But what we're actually doing is very incrementally raising our vibration. And this pattern that we run, that we no longer want to run, we no longer want to run it because we want to better our lives, and we want to be this, this human or this person, or experience something that we want to experience. And typically it's at a higher vibrational level. And so we're incrementally going up into those higher levels with every step that we take. And eventually what happens is that they were telling me is like that gap between the vibration that we're at now consistently versus that old behavior pattern gets so big that it's no longer feasible to do those lower vibrational patterns anymore. And that's when that click happens. It's like we've reached this next level and consistently reached that next level. And they kept showing me the gap is too big, that this for where we are vibrationally, whether we're aware of it consciously or not, it creates this uneasy discord in ourselves. And that's where this is no longer okay. This is no longer, and like we talked about last week, for some, it can feel like they're experiencing rock bottom. But what that really is that you're just perceiving the gap, and the gap is what is too big now. So the pattern now needs to change. And typically, it's not even the external. We think it's the external that we're trying to move from, but it really is, and I've noticed this big time, is it's this internal pain that we're going through, and we no longer want to experience that anymore. And I can speak firsthand. It's almost like many times I've said out loud, I'm like, I really don't care what happens in my external life. I just don't want my internal feeling to be like this anymore. I don't want to wake up scared anymore. I don't want to feel terrified. I don't want to be in this pain anymore. And it's shifting away from the pain, but our ego perceives that the external stuff is what is causing the pain, but it's really this internal, I just don't want to feel that way anymore at all. And yes, I do. I'm still human. I do perceive, I do sometimes unknowingly, I catch myself, project that to my external reality. But really, it's like, even if this external stuff was going on around me, but I was in peace, that'd be totally fine. Like, I'd be okay with that because I'm in peace. What I really want is that internal peace. So how do we, shift from that? And that's what they were telling me, is we're moving more into that internal peace and letting go of that internal pain. And then, as it happens, we just project that to our external reality, and our external reality eventually changes as well. So that's what they gave me.
that's amazing. So like so the little changes that have occurred, what is it exactly that they're raising? Can you say that one more time? That they're raising our vibration? Is that what you said?
We're raising our vibrational level.
Yeah.
So we're raising, certain habits that we do them, and those are what we need to cope. Don't get me wrong. Like, we label them and perceive them as bad, but this is what we need in that moment to cope. But on another level, when we raise our vibration, there are, don't want to use the word consequences, but there are, outcomes that no longer, it's no longer okay. And that's because we're raising our vibration, we're building our self-worth, we're building our confidence, where, I may go out and do this thing, and, the rest of the world reacts a certain way. And for a time being, that's okay, because I feel better. But then, then we start to say, okay, no, now this coping mechanism that I'm using, it's not actually helping me internally either the same way, and the external may not be receiving it so well. So it really comes back to, is this really serving me as a tool anymore? Right?
That's really interesting. I mean, that sits alongside my experience. I've spent time with people, certain people in my life when I was younger. Spent a lot of time around them. They weren't um, they weren't into working on themselves, kind of thing. And let's say, whenever like any situation would come up, like there's a party or something like that, the energy that was in the house would come up, right? Just all the energy that's in the house. And I could look at that person that I'm speaking of in particular, and I knew when they were going to blow. They had some dysfunction. Let's just say there's some anger issues, that kind of thing. I knew for sure. I knew exactly when it was going to happen, and then it did, just moments later, right? So and it wasn't like they did anything. I just knew they're about to go. So I just, okay, I'll give them some space. Nothing I could do to stop it. And that's what would happen. They would be dysfunctional, and it was really weird stuff would happen when that happened. So it's like what was going on is too much energy was coming through this person, this guy. I'll just say through him, and then the way he couldn't deal with it in a way that was functional. So it would just be like blah, stuff would come out, anger, whatever, right? And so what you're saying is that, if I am understanding correctly, as our vibrations increasing, or you could say maybe energy input, maybe is maybe a approximate way of saying that, as it's coming up slowly, as we're working on ourselves and being more of our authentic self, right? Mm-hmm. Then reaches a point where the old way of doing things, our old behaviors, don't, and our life situation, whatever, is not, it doesn't fit that anymore. In other words, it just can't handle that much. It's like trying to run a regular car, like a Hyundai Pony or something like that, on jet fuel, right? It's going to burn it out, right? It can't handle it. So, and what you're saying though is similar. What you're saying is that our life circumstance and the way that we're used to behaving isn't fitting this energy level. So it doesn't work. It's going to, by having that much energy coming through, we're going to, and I've experienced this myself. I end up, as I'm able to connect, everybody wants to connect and open up their third eye and all this kind of stuff. Right. But my experience is that unless you do the work first, that if you bring more energy in, more because that's going to mean you're bringing your energy and your vibration up. Unless you do that work first, bringing more energy in is just going to channel. That energy is going to get channeled into parts of your life that can't handle it. Like for me, I had a lot of physical pain, a lot of physical problems that were when you get more energy into them, I'd end up more pain, right? So in that sense, that's like not really stepping into the change yet. I'm talking about the stages coming into it. What I'm saying is that if I bring in more energy, like say if I meditate and that kind of thing, which I do, right? If it's very gentle and very gradual, I think that's what you're talking about, that incremental increase of your vibration. Let's just say you have a practice of meditation, right? Right. So more and more, I'm getting more energy come in, and then I say to Satomi, it's like, why am I getting even more pain now, right? Like I thought we dealt with this, right? All of a sudden I'm feeling sick again, right? And I've slowly come to the realization over time that if I hold myself in the same mindset while I'm say, going about my work day. In other words, let's say I'm building something technical and I'm doing some coding. Coding can be a really frustrating thing to try to work on. Like
I can imagine.
if you're
Never
a
done it.
guy and you're asked to do handyman stuff around the house and you're not used to knowing how to do it, it can be also really frustrating, right? So coding can be so computers are really dumb, okay? And they fail for the most ridiculous reasons. So
Like
it can be
today.
really frustrating when you don't get the result you're actually expecting. So if I hold myself in that kind of mindset while I'm working, and then at the same time, at a different part of the day, I'm doing like this deep meditation and I'm raising up my energy, I'm setting myself up to put rocket fuel into that Hyundai Pony.
Right.
You see what I mean?
Right.
So I'm putting too much energy into that, and it comes out as more pain, because then like that mindset I've learned over time directly translates into pain that I experience in my body.
Right.
So it's it's not that I ate something bad, right, or something that doesn't agree with me, like I'm sensitive to it, or I did whatever, and something outside affected me and created some kind of pain. It's actually my mindset. Well, while I'm working, for example, and I get frustrated, and then I'm bringing in that rocket fuel into that frustration, and it's making it even harder for me, right? So
Right.
um, now that's before I make a shift. I'm making, that's me going through the little shifts, like you're saying, raising my vibration, and then the situation in my life becomes untenable,
Right.
right? So I think that's what you're getting at is, but I'm kind of breaking it down. I'm trying to break it down a little bit because it doesn't, in my experience, I often don't experience it as, okay, I raise my vibration and then all of a sudden I just leap and I'm there, right?
Right.
I'm at a new level
Right.
and everything's great. There's a
Right.
difficult transition period that I go through where um, I'm experiencing that disconnect. My vibrations up here, but my habits are down here, and
Right.
I'm channeling that rocket fuel into that Hyundai Pony and burning it out, and so I need to make a shift. So that's why the change becomes inevitable because
Right.
the pain is too big. So I'm a little bit motivated to do something about it,
Right.
right? And thereby
Right.
bring the more of my life into alignment with my authentic self. In the end, if I then develop a habit where I let go of things, of that mindset of getting frustrated when things don't work, when I'm trying to get them to work at work. That's a lot of work. But so, so if I develop the practice of not just meditating, but also letting go of outcomes and just going with the situation. So I do some technical work and it doesn't work. It just, it's, it's garbage programming or whatever like that. Right. Or I write something and it's not good. It's not good writing. Right.
Right.
So, and I let go of that. So it's all that wasted effort. It's like, okay, but that's it. That is what it is. The reality is there. It's not working. So
Right.
what's the point in getting frustrated about it?
Right.
Right? It's already done. So why not shift my perspective to also just accept that? So then it's like, then that, because that's why I think the change is inevitable to me. That this is my experience with it. It becomes inevitable because if I keep my habits down here and my energy's up here, like you're saying, there's too much pain
Mm-hmm.
and I
That's the
have to make
disconnect.
the
Yeah.
change. So I can stick with that the way things are, and I am just in misery, or I can go with what life is indicating to me, which is to bring myself up even higher, right? So
Right.
that's why, to me, it seems like the change becomes inevitable. And this is something else I was thinking about, Anna, just because in this interceding week, I've thought about this whole question. It's like, um, another part of it is the whole to me the whole question of like of synchronicity or of outside events coming in to basically force the issue.
Right.
In other words, I can't really put it into that same, I'm not thinking of a way to put it into that same example situation of me doing my work at work, but immediately. But in other words, what I'm trying to say is that's when, maybe I'll just add this to it. That's when you have more relationship pressure come in, right? Something comes in like that that's outside of normal things. So all of a sudden there's a big crisis in the relationship, and it's related in some way to the same thing you're working on. You didn't ask for it, but there it is, right?
Yes.
And it's smacking you in the face. And in other words, it becomes inevitable because I think there's forces at work that are outside of us that are kind of preparing the way for us. And that even if we fight it, it's inevitable because, like, okay, maybe there's a lesson presented from the relationship, right? And it's right there. I could learn something and let go and become more my authentic self. But let's say I instead, I just like, I can't deal with it. I don't want to deal with this. And I just end the relationship. I walk away. I don't learn. I'm not saying that's what happened in your situation. I'm just creating a hypothetical here to illustrate the point. So if because I mean, I have walked away from relationships and not learned in the past myself, right? So if I walk away from that, then I've lost the opportunity then to move myself up. But I think that the world, the way it works, it's going to come back around anyway.
Yes.
So that it becomes inevitable in that sense. So the change, whether I want to or not, really doesn't have a lot to do with this.
Right.
So in other words, you could say it's karma, right? So the next relationship I get into, at some point, past the honeymoon phase, whatever, I'm going to end up in that same kind of situation. Maybe it takes on a different form, but it's going to be there. Right. So in that sense, I'm kind of going to end up with that same disconnect getting shoved in my face until I get the picture and like, okay, I'll deal with it this time. Right. So that's partly why I think as well it becomes inevitable. But that's my theory.
That is, and this is, I've had lots of conversations with my guides and spirit team, and it keeps coming back to everything is actually internal. So those outside circumstances, they're not just things that just appear. This is actually a discord occurring within you, because we all do everything to feel better. We all do everything we do is to feel better and to feel good. And that is the purpose of why we do it all. And that is when we raise our vibration, that's what we do. We live more in peace. We live more in joy. We live more in these places. And that's what we're all, trying to attain. And so when our habits don't fall in line with that vibrational level that we're at or that we want to be at, then that pain happens, and we project that outward, and life gives us the opportunity, like it presents a physical reality of what is going on internally, so we as a mirror, so that we can see. It's actually a beautiful process and a beautiful tool, because it's just a projection outward of what is going on internally. And when you move through that internal process, then that's when we start healing our projections. That's when the outside reality changes as well, right? And so what I was hearing when you mentioned, I'm not sure if you call him a friend, but you mentioned the party the guy at the party, is his outbursts. That is what he needed to do to feel better. And that was the tool that he needed to use at the time to feel better. Was it most
Mm.
likely disruptive to everybody else? Yes. If he had removed, and this is where that self-growth piece comes from, if he had removed and healed the guilt that he most likely felt after doing this, and healed that's when the guilt puts us back into that spiral, the shame and the guilt, and then he's going to hide, he's not going to face it, he's going to keep it within, and then the next time inevitably explode again. But if he let go of the guilt and made it okay that this is what he's doing right now, and this is what he needs to release that energy, that's when that light bulb starts going off. Oh, this doesn't actually feel good, and this is not the way that I want, this is not who I want to be, this is not, I don't want to make all these people feel bad because but then that's when we step into the, okay, so I don't want to use that method anymore. I'm going to choose another method. And this is where we change the habit, which feels messy at first because our ego, our body loves comfortable. It loves the old. And so it's scary and not always, doesn't always work seamlessly on the first go. But it kind of, the more that we do it our old way, the more we realize that, no, I really don't want to do it that way anymore. It doesn't feel good to do anymore. And then we look for that new place and choose that new path. And, one of the things that I have moved through is bulimia. And that was a tough one to move through. And when the healing really began, and I'm so happy to say it's no longer an issue in my life, was when I made it. And this, I know this will be, it's controversy, and I know that, but I also understand energetically how it worked, is when I made it okay to do. And when I made it okay for myself without the guilt and without the shame, that's when I started to really feel after I do it, I really don't feel that great. And this isn't actually making me feel good at all. And that's when the real change began to happen, because I made it okay to do. And when I did that, it didn't feel good for me anymore. Like I could really, and if I look back, it never really did. But that guilt and shame spiral that I put myself under for doing that just inevitably led me back to needing some sort of release. And that was the tool I was using at the time for that release.
So in other words, what you're saying, if I'm following you with that, is that for the longest time you hated being that way, and you didn't want to be that way, and you felt guilty, and you pushed that part of yourself away. But as soon as you decided at some point that part of you was you and deserved to be loved just like any part of you, then it opened the door to integration, and you're able to then you just accepted that side of yourself, that all the behavior that you're going through that you didn't like, you accepted it and loved that Anna. Yep. And then as soon as you did that, you became whole, and you weren't then compelled to still engage in that behavior. Is that a fair assessment?
Yes.
Yeah. That's exactly, that's one of the most powerful things that we can do is when we want to create change is to love that part of ourselves that we don't like. And it's okay to not like it. That's different, right? It's like you can have family members that you don't like but still love them. Yes. Right? You can have that acceptance and that love even if you don't even have that person in your life because they're just too toxic, right?
Yes.
And if you're having that acceptance and that love for that behavior, that toxic behavior that was not good for you, doesn't help you in any way. The fact that you loved yourself anyway allowed you to move past it, allowed you to be whole and be who you really are, right?
Right.
Yeah.
But here's the clincher, is that behavior was helping me. It was the tool that was helping me at that time. It's my perception, and I understand, and yes, it's not the tool that I wanted to use, but it helped me at the time. And as soon as I took away that it was something bad, then it opened the door that, oh, I can just choose another one. Right? It was the judgment and the negativity I put on it. And yes, this is extremely controversial because it, like, I don't want to condone everybody, using bulimia as a tool by any means. However, from the healing, it's when you really own it and take away the guilt and the shame and the self-judgment on it. Then it brings you back more into that self-love, that higher vibration, and you can really stand at a place like, is this really doing what I want it to do? Is the the feeling horrible afterwards? Is that how I really want to, like, yes, there was a moment of reprieve and there was a moment of it making me feel better, but long term it started to switch. It started to become no longer beneficial, but I got to make that choice from a place of acceptance and self-love versus judgment on it.
Well, I think that that judgment of ourselves and that rejection of ourselves is really the point in those situations, and that since you moved past it by loving yourself anyway, right? Despite doing things that you didn't like, whatever, it wasn't healthy and all that kind of stuff. The fact you moved past the judgment of it, that was the thing that allowed you to connect to, this is the vibration, I think what we had before, and bring your behavior in line with your vibration, right? And so then it didn't, then that situation, you were then able to make different choices. So in other words, the choice that was put in front of you, that you were ready to move past judgment, and then that was the situation that you were presented with to learn that aspect of being. And as soon as you learned it, then that freed you up to make different choices about how you achieved what you wanted to achieve, right? So until then, you're getting that same thing shoved in your face, right? The whole bulimia thing was still getting, it's like the subconscious drive to take you there, but and so changing it was impossible up till then, right? You wanted to change it, but you couldn't. But then once you've done other things to raise your vibration, like you're saying, you got to that point where, okay, I can stop judging myself. That is the key. It's important to figure out what there's a process to go through to figure out what is the thing that brings your behavior and your lifestyle and your way of being in line with your vibration. What is the trick? And there are things you can do. You can work with someone who's intuitive. You can use your own intuition. You can so you can meditate and that kind of thing. You can examine your life. And one of the things that I've done with it is to just let life show it to me. So out of the circumstances that are going on, what is this lesson telling me? What is this situation telling me? What's the message in it? In other words, if And that's connected to the way we look at things, which is that there's no problems, there's only opportunities, right? And if you look at that situation, the bulimia, for example, as a problem, then you're immediately in judgment.
Yes.
But if you look at it as an opportunity to learn something and look around, and somewhere in that circumstance, there's an opportunity, you're already getting out of judgment and opening up the door to releasing it, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So yeah, that's it's a very powerful thing to look at life as and all the stuff we end up with, all the challenges that are, the rough and tumble of life. And instead of falling into the disempowering and very Western perspective that, oh, it's all just random crap, shit happens, right? And you deal with it. If you look at it that way, it's very disempowering.
Mm-hmm.
If you instead look at it from the point of view that it's an opportunity, that situation, as difficult as it may be, perhaps unpleasant, painful, costly, whatever it is, whatever that situation is to you, as unasked for and unwelcome as it may be, it's still, if you look at it as an opportunity, and so you're looking in there, you're not judging, you're not pushing it away and saying, I hate this, I don't want it, get out of my life, and pushing away, like the bulimia, for example, right? Or all the stuff that people get faced with, right?
Yeah.
Instead of pushing it away, you look at it as an opportunity, then that changes life completely. You can let life indicate the way, and then you're able to see what change, or here's your vibration up here, I keep forgetting. And and then you're able to see what is the change that will take me up to here.
Right.
What is the thing? What is the specific thing that I do to bring me up here? Right. Because it's not always obvious. And if you're pushing away at circumstances around you, you just get it. You just want things to be easy and comfortable, and you hate everything that's not, then it's going to be hard to find it, right? And even if somebody approaches you, like psychically knows and tells you, right, here it is, you might just say, no, I don't want to deal with that. I don't want to accept it because it's just not what I want, right?
Right.
So then the pain continues, and so the pain continuing until you move up, I think, is part of that all of this stuff, I think, is part of the inevitability where, yes, it's impossible when your energy is down here, right? If your energy is down here, then it's not going to be possible to move forward.
Right.
But if you're moving your energy up, like you're saying, your vibration up, and like I was saying before, meditation is one of those practices, but other things are too. Exercise will bring your energy up, right?
Yep.
Eating well will bring your energy up. All those things where we, just bringing more love into your life, right? Opening yourself up to meeting new people, right? That just bringing out more of you is going to bring your energy up all these different ways. You don't have to be a Buddhist monk to get that energy up. There's so many practical things. And then once you get there, then it's become, now the impossible, what was impossible becomes possible. And as we're saying here in this episode, we feel it's inevitable that change will happen. It's just a matter of when, and finding the mechanism to bring yourself up to match your new energy level, right? Because once that energy level is up there, some kind of disruption is going to come into your life, something, because it's just not that old way of doing things doesn't work anymore. And like you're saying, it is internal. Like I'm talking about external circumstances coming in. I have mentioned that here, and I agree with you completely that that's appearances and that it is internal. Because like for me, for example, if I'm frustrated if I'm looking at work as I'm expecting an outcome. I've done this much work and I think it should work this way. And then it doesn't. And I can't figure out why. If I'm bringing frustration into that, I'm going to bring frustration into my relationship with Satomi.
Right.
Right. It's,
Right.
I can't be open-minded in my relationship with Satomi and, just everything goes cool and smooth and everything. And kind of dorky with the way I approach work, right?
Right. Right.
I'm going to be aware in both or neither,
Right.
more or less, right? So,
Right.
So it looks like an outside circumstance that there's tension in the relationship coming in. At the same time, this work thing is part of my life and creating pain, right? But no, it's
Right.
not external. It's not
No.
external to me. I'm getting frustrated with Satomi for my own reasons, right?
Right.
And that's what's great about relationships, is that they present us with those opportunities, like you said, as a mirror. Like the world around us is like a mirror.
Right.
Pardon me. And it's like a mirror, and it presents us with our own stuff.
Yeah.
Just like you said. So I
It'll
completely
mirror
agree.
that. It's like, yeah,
100%.
you're frustrated at work. Well, then you're just frustrated. So now you're going to
Yes.
see the rest of your world through the lens of frustration. So you are going to
Yes.
see something that Satomi does that frustrates you, because that's
Yes.
the lens that you're looking at the external world through, right?
Yes.
So let's change the lens.
Exactly. Or I
Right?
could continue blaming her, and that's gonna really work. No.
No,
Right. You
no,
know?
because again, it always comes back. And this is one tool that I love using. It's like if I find myself blaming someone externally, it's like,
Yeah.
whoa, wait a minute. What am I blaming myself for? Like, what I'm blaming them for is something that I'm either blaming myself. Yeah, it's an internal something. So again, it comes back to this mirror and gives us a moment to pause and go, whoa, whoa, I'm not really mad at them. I'm mad. Why am I mad? Right. But in me, right? Not at them. And though I do want to point out that, and I've used this recently, is that those emotions, even though we're pointing them externally, sometimes they need a voice. And I'm not saying we need to yell at our partner to get that out. But doing things like free vent journaling, where we can get that feeling of blame out. And I love journaling and then burning it, because it's like it's not even in our physical presence anymore. It's gone. The blame is gone. But then that opens the door to, okay, now really, what was this really about? Because I know it's not about blaming them. And we can shift our perception internally and figure out, what am I really upset about? Because it's not about them.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm going to go through our notes, our preparation notes here from what you sent previously. So we kind of talked about this, I think, right? That click,
Yes.
that is, there's that question of, is it coming from fear or like impatience, right? So you want to change, or is spirit calling, right? We're kind of talking around this, but maybe we can kind of fill this out a little bit. Maybe
Well, that was one I was,
share
asking
what you say.
asking myself a lot,
Yeah.
because and this is what came to me, is those moments where I was incrementally going up. If I'm honest with myself, I was doing everything externally to feel in the feeling that it was going to fix me. Right. So I was going to all these things excited that it was, oh, this is going to be the one thing that's going to fix me. And I was not realizing that there was actually an underlying fear below it. What I've noticed since my click is it's reversed. I feel like right now I live primarily, like that fear is with me all day long. It is present, it is there, it is coming up. But there is now something below the surface now that is actually calm and strong and pulling me towards this new habit, this new thing I'm doing. Right. So it's it flipped. One point I was not willing to look at something so painful, and I was going to do these things in an attempt to erase this painful thing. And now this pain has come up, it's present with me, but there's this calm space, and I'm doing things that I never thought that I would do because I'm moving through that fear. I'm letting it go. It is no longer controlling me in the sense that I'm not looking at it anymore. So that's what I've noticed, is that when I'm moving from fear, it's in an attempt to avoid looking at it and avoid feeling it. And it's a step. I'm not saying that it's we should never do it. Is a step in the process, but this has became very apparent to me in in the two differences between where that inevitable change happens for me, right? And where I'm not quite yet at that phase where that I've made that click and that change is inevitable.
Because there's the fear of the unknown, right? There's the fear of failure. There's the fear of making a mistake.
Yes.
Right? There's and that's connected to like not having trust in yourself or that kind of thing, just confidence, whatever. So when you're saying the fear, which one are you speaking of? Is it a mix of all of those, or potentially one more than another?
All of them. So,
okay.
Let's say there was a new, the example they're giving me now is, let's say I want to, start my own business and be my own, financial stability, right? Well, in the phase before I manifested and where I was coming from fear, well, I'm not going to start that until I'm fixed. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to do all these things before I move into that space of who I am. But there is nothing for us to fix. And when that click happened for me, it was like, I'm just going to go do it now. I'm still terrified. It is still there, but the fear is no longer controlling me. There's nothing, I'm no longer going over here to fix something. I'm going to do it, moving through the fear, taking it with me if I need to, and moving into that space. And what I've noticed is as I'm doing that, the fear dissipates. It's no longer the controlling factor in that.
I can completely relate to that so much. I mean, before, I switched from my old career to Satomi and I doing this, I wanted everything to be perfect, right? Within myself, the way we do things with this work that we're doing, everything to be all lined up before I venture to put anything out there public, right?
Right.
Or to have everything, have every chance of success all lined up before trying to put something out there and in the attempt of getting it to work. So that, and that's typical, right? For people that have this very common thing that the people want that, but reality is in life, I mean, in what part of life does that ever happen?
Right.
Anywhere, like any aspect of life, we're never all super prepped. It's always that everything's always changing. The ground is always shifting around us and being redefined and new stuff coming into the picture. I mean, you can work at the same company for years and be like, hopefully just doing the same thing and not have to bother having to learn something new. Well, a new manager comes in and he wants to do everything differently. Right. So, there's a control thing that I can completely relate to with what you're saying, a fear of failure, all that kind of stuff, lack of confidence, any of those things can get in there and prevent you from moving forward. So the click then as you're saying, is it coming from fear, impatience? So in other words, but that's a little different than what we're saying right now, because there's like you can be kind of desperate for something to get changed. Like, so when I was talking earlier, I'm in pain. I'm going to be, my body's in pain. I'm going to be to a certain degree desperate to have it changed, right? The energy's up here, my vibration, but me being sitting here in frustration, working away in frustration, creating that pain because of the disconnect, I'm going to be kind of desperate and impatient for it to, oh, come on, I just want this to be fixed already. I've been, dealing with this for a while. What do I have to do, right? So is the click coming from that or from spirit calling? And I think that you can't have well, it's kind of baked into, I think, to what we were saying already, that if it's fear, it's going to end up with pain pushing you toward the change and making it impossible to stay there.
Yes.
If it's spirit calling, if it's coming from, like what your example was, acceptance and love and moving past judgment of yourself, self-judgment, that's spirit calling. And that's going to lead to the success, like you're saying. Immediately it just clicks, right? So it was impossible before. You couldn't change because the judgment was still there. But then once you let go of the judgment, it's just there. It's done, right?
Right.
You might be desperately wanting to change in the past, and there's fear in that you could really hurt yourself or fail or all those kinds of things. And so maybe it's just my note here from my short note here, that it's kind of, I'm trying to put the click with the fear, because I don't ever see the click with the fear. Like this to me is the click, right? All of a sudden,
I think maybe not the click so much, but the motivation that you're moving from, right? Is that a fear-based
that part I get.
motive?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Or is it, your higher self, your spirit, your soul,
Mm-hmm.
the higher vibration calling, right? And I think it comes back all around to, are you doing something to fix something within yourself, right? Is there, and then moving back into that self-love piece, right? And the non-judgment, moving the judgment from, it feels like a catch-22 every time I move through this process. And like, no matter how many times I do it, still feels like a catch-22. I have had some angry moments with spirit that this is the process. It seems backwards. But inevitably it's, when you move, I'm honest, but inevitably when you move past that judgment, then you're right where you want to be that whole time.
Yeah, well,
right? So
and me too. I mean, I've been angry with spirit too. I think it's every one of us gets angry and frustrated with being stuck back in that pain and suffering, right? And because a lot of our experience ends up being pain and suffering. And there's so many things we could do that don't address it. And there's so many aspects about the way we're taught, I think especially in Western culture, that propagate it and make it inevitable. So it's a mess to try to find your way out of, right?
Yes.
There's a lot of things to disentangle, and it takes a lot of discipline and patience and resilience to get through that stuff. So I think we're totally on the same page there. So I think we also kind of touched on this.
Right.
Did you want to add into anything to this?
Again, that just, the anger and the frustration, I've learned it's a fuel for change, and it's in Western, just in our culture, how it has a negative connotation to it, just in our culture.
Mm.
And that again brings us back to that self-judgment piece. I don't know how many times I felt like I consider myself this, this loving being. How can a loving being feel anger and frustration? It seems, not to mix. But it's simply an energy. It's simply an emotion, and it's how we utilize that and move through it, right? Just because I'm angry and frustrated doesn't mean I need to yell at somebody, right? It's just meaning that my spirit, my inner being is saying, hey, over here, something needs to change. You deserve something better. And it's how we move through that energy, that I think is the clincher, right? And you're laughing.
I'm laughing because I mean, I've worked so hard on myself, I'm not as I used to be, and I've let go of so much stuff, but I still get frustrated, right? So it's like things happen, right? That it's like you make the change, you bring yourself up to that level, right? That new level, and then your energy vibrations are still going up. I mean, they were all going up all along, and now they haven't stopped. So this, you're good now, right? No,
Yes.
no, they keep going, right?
No.
And that creates another thing where it's like,
Yes.
oh my God, here we are again,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
So it's the process that keeps going, and honestly, I think it accelerates over time.
Yes. I just feel like that.
So. So what used to be uh, a level of personal development that would work, that would easily handle your old situations, your old challenges, you end up pushing against new challenges, right? And that they're always there waiting for you. And so there's always another opportunity for that frustration to come in.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. And to say, hey, look, you deserve something better. There's another change that can be made here to help raise that vibration. And that alone can be frustrating and bring up anger.
Yeah, so I wonder if Buddha would get a little bit irked if somebody called him, "Hey, Baldy," right, or something,
Yeah.
right? Like he got it really bothered him, from earlier in life, kind of thing. So anyway,
Right.
yeah. But is there, like, I think you were in a previous conversation, you're saying that there's a way to use the anger and frustration constructively. Did we cover that fully in what we're saying, or is there something else you'd like to share?
Well, the biggest thing I think is finding, because it's just a buildup of energy, right? And so just like your friend, there, again, not sure if you want to label him that, but how do you expel that energy constructively, right? And there's many times where I've had a buildup of it, and it was most likely a buildup over many, 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 many years, because
Mm,
anger was something, I didn't even realize I didn't express. It was
mm,
just, I was a loving person and I don't get angry, right? And so there was a
mm,
buildup of that. And so it needed just a way out. And there's a lot of times I took my pillow off my bed and I smashed that onto my bed, right? But it was releasing. There was a buildup of energy in my arms that needed to be released. It was a way for me to constructively do that, let that energy out of my body,
mm,
and then come back to that centered place and say, okay,
mm,
what are you telling me here? Like, what is the message that you're trying to convey, right? And so
mm,
it's getting out of that first off, that it's bad, because when we deem it as bad, that's when we go and we take it out on somebody else, because we feel guilty that we're feeling it at all, that we're, therefore ego goes, it must be somebody else's fault. And now that's where the blame game happens, right? But if we take
mm,
responsibility for that, and
mm,
see it as it's something that needs to be released, and it has a message, a constructive message for me, right? Let's
mm.
let that energy out. Now, what are you trying to tell me? Right.
Yeah, yeah.
And move into that space.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, for many years, I've looked at anger as useful in because it's motivation, right?
Mm-hmm.
You
Mm-hmm.
can you can use your anger to drive change in your life, whatever that
Right.
is.
Right.
Um,
Right.
and and you were saying, I was laughing as well because like everybody looks at themselves. Our ego just loves to look at ourselves as, oh, we're loving people. How are we getting angry?
Right.
So
Right.
how is that? How is that possible? How can it even be thinkable? No, it's not even think. No, that's ego, right? So it's like,
Yes.
it's so funny how we all have that egoic impression of ourselves. But,
But what just came to me though, it makes sense though, because if you think about it, anger propels change. And what does the ego not like? Does not like change. So it's going to
yeah,
see this anger as a negative
yeah,
thing to stop us from saying, hey, something needs to change.
yeah.
Right?
And I find it to be also like a good motivator for exercise.
Yeah, that too. See, it's just it's the physical release. Yes, like me, sorry, myself included, right? There's a lot of times go exercise, get that energy out of your system,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And
Right. Yeah, and then you can calm down. You can
mhm,
come into acceptance and thoughtful consideration after you vent it like that. So,
right,
yeah,
right,
absolutely.
right.
So, that we are already over an hour here. It's unbelievable how fast that time goes. Great
Yes.
conversation. So before we can go any further here, what I think what we're going to do is consider a part 3.
Awesome.
We'll talk about this, Anna, and see how that lines up for you. And I also want to mention that you have a wonderful promotion that you're doing. You have a 20-minute free soul reading that you're doing at AwakenedYou.ca. So I'd encourage our viewers to go check that out. Um, as you can see, Anna's just a wonderful person, and she's got tremendous amount of intuitive insight to share. So that's, what do you got to lose to checking that out, right? Free soul reading. That's awesome. So there's that, and you can come by and check out our services anytime for at sexo.ca/breakthrough, and you can move through those subconscious beliefs that are making this kind of growth and development hard, and that's what we can help you out with. Or you can do a reading with Satomi. You can check out our services there, and we'll see you next week right here at 4 o'clock Eastern on next Sunday on Aether, and we'll just continue this great conversation. I just want to say, give a big warm thank you to Anna for joining us here and making this another wonderful episode. So thank you.
And thank you for having me. I enjoyed immensely.
Awesome. Check out that free reading, everybody. All right.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll see you next week, everyone. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.